What's up YouTube? Aeneas here again. Have a few more spoiler previews I wanted to go through with you. Like I've been saying, this set is really sweet. There's so many interesting build-around cards, so many cards that I think are going to spawn new metas, new archetypes. So yeah, I'm really excited for Dominaria United coming out, and I just wanted to share some of the cards that I think are really cool and excite me a lot. So last video was a little long. Try to keep this one a little bit more brief as we go through these, but yeah, let's get into it. So the first card I wanted to look at today is Karn Living Legacy. So we've had Karn Planeswalkers in the past, but you know, a lot of them have been pretty good, pretty solid Planeswalkers. The key thing that's pretty unique about Karn Planeswalkers is that they're colorless, right? So you can put them in any deck. So I think, you know, Wizards trying to keep it a little bit safe because it's a colorless card, and so they didn't make him super powerful or anything. But I do think people are sleeping on Karn a little bit. It's like I mentioned, it's colorless, so you can put it in any deck, even decks that don't have very good draw, for example. And the one thing that this card I think is good at is drawing you cards. So let's go ahead and read through this card, and you can kind of see what I mean. So, Karn is 4 mana. Karn the Living Legacy is 4 mana and has 4 loyalty. The plus ability to increase the loyalty is you gain a tapped Power Stone token. And what this does, it's an artifact that taps for mana, but the mana cannot be used for non-artifact spells. So when you cast a spell, it has to be an artifact or you can't use that mana stone, the Power Stone. But you can use it for abilities of creatures, planeswalkers, lands, etc., enchantments, all those things. So it is useful for certain things, for certain build-around decks, but not all the time. And it does work to power his second ability. So his second ability says, pay any amount of mana, look at that many cards from the top of your library, and put one of those cards into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's a -1 ability, and he starts with 4 loyalty. So let's say you play this on turn 5, you put him down, you -1, and you can draw 1 card immediately, right? So that's not terrible. You've kind of already recuperated your cost for that when you do that. Alright, let me read the ultimate. It's probably never going to happen, but might as well read it. So his ultimate's a -7. You get an emblem with tap an untapped artifact you control. This emblem deals 1 damage to any target. So that ability probably not going to happen unless we see like a really big artifact deck. Somehow this survives, and yeah, not likely to happen. But I think that second ability is pretty decent. At the very least, if you have some creatures and this is kind of like a late game card in your mid-rangey deck, you can play this down. You can draw 2, 3, 4 cards, and you're going to be pretty happy with that, I think. So it's not a rock star, it's not Teferi 5, but it can draw you some cards. So I think that's pretty decent for a Planeswalker. Alright, but yeah, it's interesting design. And let's look at the next card. The next one is a really good Planeswalker, at least historically. That's Liliana of the Veil. So this is a 1 and a black, +1. Each player discards a card, so that includes yourself. Each player discards a card. -2, target player sacrifices a creature. So you're going to target your opponent most of the time with that. And then the ultimate, separate all permanents target player controls into 2 piles. Then that player sacrifices all permanents in the pile of their choice. So you choose how to separate their stuff, and then they have to destroy one of the piles and keep the other pile, basically. Yeah, so historically Liliana of the Veil has been pretty good because it comes down on turn 3 and you can kill a creature. So almost always that's the kind of play pattern you're going to play, is like maybe your opponent plays something and then you kill it, and then on their turn 2 they play something else, and then you play on your turn 3 Liliana of the Veil and you kill their thing, and now you have a Planeswalker on the board and they have nothing. So yeah, if you can get that to stick, then you've pretty much won at that point. So at the very least, it's going to trade for someone's creature, and if it stays longer, then eventually you'll get some value out of it. So it's pretty good. The plus ability, I think to really gain advantage of the plus, you're gonna have to build around it, have some cards that synergize with the discard effect, so you don't mind discarding so much. But in this set, there's actually quite a few that work with that, so we'll see some of those cards later. Based on the cards I've seen so far, seems like it's going to be a banger of a card in this set, and you know, at the very least, it's a removal, and also has a lot of other synergies. So yeah, for me, this is a banger build around card that's going to make some sweet black or Dimir or Orzhov type deck. Yeah, it's going to be sweet. Alright, next one. Monstrous War Leech. So this is a 4-mana star, so the power is scaling. And it has a kicker ability for 1 blue mana. If you pay that kicker, then when it comes to the battlefield, it mills 4 cards. So you mill 4 into your graveyard. And the War Leech's power and toughness are equal to the highest mana value among cards in your graveyard. So highest mana value, it doesn't have to be creatures, so highest mana value of any card in your graveyard. So it could even be a big spell, 6-mana spell, like we saw earlier with the instants and sorceries, draw your card spell. It can be Shadow of Mortality, which is 15 mana for a 7/7. So this will be a 15/15. So pretty, you know, big chunky boy, right? Like it's got a big body on it. And you know, if you have this in your deck with Liliana, maybe, and you're discarding cards, you could discard your 15 mana cost creature and play this guy and be pretty happy with that, I think. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. And there was like a Streets of New Capenna reanimation spell that I had built a deck around. And there's a lot of mill cards that were in Streets of New Capenna too, so there's currently quite a few ways to mill yourself and get something big in the graveyard and make this guy a pretty large creature that probably has to be killed. So even if it comes in 4 mana, it's like a 6/6 or 7/7. That's not bad. I mean, they're gonna have to deal with it, and aggro opponent's not gonna have a good way to get rid of it. So yeah, interesting at least. I think it will fit into that Reanimator style deck that we were able to make in Streets of New Capenna, and maybe make that deck a little bit more viable, more competitive. So really interested about this card. Alright, the next one, Plaza of Heroes. This is a pretty sweet land that we're getting in Dominaria United. So the first effect is tap for a colorless mana. Okay, doesn't matter. Or you can add 1 mana of any color and spend this mana to cast a legendary spell. So it's very, very important that it's a legendary spell and not legendary creature. So you can use this for a lot of different things. There's planeswalkers, legendary creatures, there's some legendary enchantments like Meathook Massacre, there's legendary artifacts. I guess Great Henge was a legendary artifact, something like that. So there are those, and then there's even a few legendary sorcery spells back in the original Dominaria set, or the last Dominaria. So it could even cast that if you wanted to. But so it's pretty useful, I would say, especially in this set. It seems like it's going to be good. And then the next ability, tap, add 1 mana of any color among legendary permanents you control. So if you have those Meathook Massacre, or a Planeswalker, Liliana the Veil, or a legendary creature, then you're going to have this tap for that mana just all the time. So that makes this land pretty usable, I would say. I mean, it makes it much more well-rounded. And then it doesn't even stop there. It has another ability, 3 and a tap, exile this land, and target legendary creature gets hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So yeah, it slices, it dices, it does everything. It lets you cast your legendary creatures, your planeswalkers, etc. It provides colorful mana after that, and it can protect your legendary creatures as well. So pretty solid. Definitely a commander staple if you play commander, but even in standard, I think this is going to see some pretty good play in a lot of decks. So yeah, very cool. Very good for the color fixing that we're going to need in Dominaria United. Alright, next card that I particularly think looks interesting. Not everyone's as into this card, but some people think it's cool. Rona's Vortex. So this is 1 blue and has a kicker for 2 and a black. And the effect says, return target creature or planeswalker you don't control to its owner's hand. If this spell was kicked, put that permanent on the bottom of its owner's library instead. So essentially, it's either a 1 mana bounce creature planeswalker, or 4 mana to kind of kill that creature, basically. Kill the creature or planeswalker, because it puts it on the bottom of their library. And almost never are they going to get that card back. If they shuffle, they might not even find it again, so that card is pretty much gone at that point. So yeah, I think this is really versatile, right? If you're facing an aggro opponent and you're getting beat down and you just need to bounce the thing, instant speed bounce is pretty good. Or if they get like a Chandra 3 down and you're like, oh man, you know, I don't have any early game removal for a planeswalker, what the heck am I going to do? You can bounce it with this, right? Delay it, stall them a turn, make them waste their mana. So that part is still really good. And then later in the game is when you really want to cast it if you can, but you still have it for the 1 mana emergencies when you need it. So yeah, pretty solid. Sometimes even, you know, sticking it back in their deck is better than destroy. A lot of these creatures have like effects when they die, or people can get them back from the graveyard or stuff like that. So putting it in their deck gets it gone for good, basically. So that's pretty solid removal card. And there's also a lot of synergies with the 1 mana and 2 mana spells. I know there's like a new mage called like Micromancer that gets you a 1 mana spell, so it could get this one, and then you can cast it for 4 with the kicker ray. Also, there's the Saga we saw last time that lets you cast a 1 or 2 mana spell. So you could cast this if you want to, but you can also cast it later for the kicker cost. So there's a lot of pretty sweet synergies that you can do with this, and I think it's just a pretty well-rounded card. Like, we were running some Fading Hopes in control decks before because you just need some help with aggro. So something like this could be what you need to kind of maintain the board early game. Pretty sweet. Alright, next one, Sarah Paragon. So this is a flying angel. This got spoiled just recently, honestly. This is really good for kind of mid-range beatdown decks because it's kind of almost got a Lurrus effect. Once during each of your turns, you may play a land from your graveyard or cast a permanent spell with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. If you do, it gains this permanent. When this permanent is put back in the graveyard from the battlefield, exile it, and you gain 2 life. So you can't keep bringing the same permanent back over and over again, but you can bring all your permanents back 1 time each turn. And it works for lands too, so Lurrus didn't even work for lands. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's not a companion, of course, which is one thing that made Lurrus really strong. But it's still a strong effect. Yeah, I guess the turn you play, you might want to try to get a land the first turn, so it's not like dies for nothing, and then if they kill it, at least you got a land. But if they don't kill it, then you untap it and you start going crazy, right? You just get to play 3 mana creatures all the time. So pretty solid. I think we're going to see it in a lot of the white weenie decks. You know, it's like kind of the top end. Maybe even other decks, angel decks. We just saw another cool angel earlier, so yeah, this makes the cut, I think, as well. Pretty sweet card. All right, the next one. If you haven't already figured it out, I'm a big control fan, so I really love the blue draw spells. But this one just got spoiled, and this one is so sweet as well. It's 2 blues and an X, and the cost for the X, or however much you pay X, is how many cards you draw. So you draw X cards. And the other thing that makes this better than the previous iterations of this card is that you may cast Silver Scrutiny as though it had flash if X is 3 or less. So, essentially, you can draw up to 3 cards at instant speed with this card. And then later in the game, when you want to draw a bunch of cards, then you can make X bigger, like 6 or whatever, to just refill your entire hand. Yeah, that's a pretty sweet. Like, the going rate for drawing 2 cards is typically about 3 mana. Sometimes you can get it for 2 under like very rare circumstances, and sometimes you're willing to pay 4 for drawing 2 cards, but it has to be instant speed. If it's not instant speed, it's not worth it. And even then, we have some cards that do more than that, right? Like Memory Deluge lets you look at the top 4 and then you draw 2. So yeah, that's definitely better than this if you're only drawing 2 cards. But drawing 3 cards, now you're talking, right? Now that's a much harder price to come by, getting 3 cards. And potentially, you can just keep saving this until much later in the game. But I think the real power comes where it's like, you can keep holding up counter magic, or holding up removal, or holding up like a flash creature, up until even 5 mana is open, where you can just draw 3 cards at instant speed. So they always have to be careful, like, to make you use your mana, otherwise you're gonna get your hand refilled again. So it's pretty potent, I think, and we'll see how it pans out in the meta. But yeah, really cool card. Alright, the next one, this is for you aggro fans, so Stronghold Arena. It's 1 and a black, and you can play a kicker of a green or a white. And whenever Stronghold Arena enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life for each time it was kicked. And the text says, whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you may reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. If you do, you lose life equal to its mana value. Yeah, so I think this would be really great in some sort of black aggro deck, maybe even a Golgari aggro deck. I don't think we really had a good Orzhov one, maybe Adventure, but that was mostly in Alchemy, so I don't know. Maybe we'll see something like that, but it's pretty sweet. We've had this effect before on like the Sorin 4 that we currently have in the meta, and also the Jace. I think a little bit different on the Jace Mirror Mage Planeswalker, but similar kind of thing where, like, in that one Jace lost counters based on the mana value, and the Sorin one makes you lose life based on the mana value. So we've seen similar effects. I guess you could also say Bolas' Citadel if you played back in War of the Spark, but it's a little bit different than that, to be honest. But this seems pretty solid. Half your deck is lands, right? So you're hitting lands, and you just put the land in your hand for free, so you're not paying life for that, and that's going to get you through your lands really quick and leave you just drawing creatures. You might get the unfortunate circumstance where you keep hitting your creatures off this and then drawing your lands the next turn. That always happens sometimes, but typically whenever I've played Sorin, the life loss was never that much. You got 50% or more lands, right? So it was always pretty good deal. Maybe you pay like 5 or 6 life and you get like 3 or 4 cards. So yeah, it seems good. It's going to be good in aggro where you want it to be good, and you don't care about your life as much in aggro anyway. So yeah, sweet card. Alright, Temporary Lockdown. This is kind of the 3 mana sweeper effect that we've been needing in Standard. They keep giving us these -2/-2 effects, but all their creatures nowadays are bigger than -2, so it doesn't even kill them. But this one looks pretty sweet. It exiles each. Well, let me just read the card. 1 and 2 white. When Temporary Lockdown enters the battlefield, exile each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less until Temporary Lockdown leaves the battlefield. So it's going to get rid of every card that non-land permanent that is mana value 2 or less. So turn 1 they play a creature, you play a tap land, turn 2 they play another creature, you play a land and maybe draw a card or something, and then turn 3 they play maybe 2 more small creatures or something, or they play a tap land and a 2-drop or something like that, whatever. And then you play this and you get rid of their board. So that's kind of the ideal situation. You know, you always have to play around and see how things go, but it gets rid of artifacts, it gets rid of the anvil from the black-red anvil deck, so yeah, it seems pretty sweet. Definitely gonna be trying this card out for sure. Alright, I think we're getting close to the end, but this one is the Raven Man. He's 1 in a black and a legendary human wizard. At the beginning of your end step, if a player discarded a card this turn, create a 1/1 bird creature token with flying, and this creature can't block. And then 4 mana and a tap, 3 in a black and a tap. Each opponent discards a card. Activate only as a sorcery. So this card synergizes well with Liliana of the Vests, because you make everyone discard and then you create a bird. It also synergizes well with anything that makes you discard, like Faithless Looting in Historic. This basically becomes a Pyromancer or Young Pyromancer. Not quite as good as Young Pyromancer, but similar type of effect where you're discarding, getting some value, and getting a bird for free. So, very sweet card. It even has the built-in discard into it for the late game. Yeah, not much to say here. It's just gonna be a solid card in some sort of black tempo, black discard type effect deck. It would probably be really sweet in a Madness deck, to be honest, because you'd get the bird and you'd get the card that you discarded to your Madness, and yeah, some other value. So yeah, it's gonna be sweet in Historic for sure as well. Pretty sweet card. Alright, oh man, we're not quite done, but time is getting there. So let me just hurry through these last couple cards. So Talarian Terror, 6 in a blue, costs 1 less to cast for each instant sorcery in your graveyard. Ward 2, and it's a 5/5 body. So we saw the instant sorcery in Graveyard Matters cards already. There's a bunch of them, and this is going to fit right into that. Basically, you're going to be getting this for like 3 mana, something like that, or even 4 mana. It's not that bad, right? 5/5 Ward 2 for 4 mana, and late game is going to be basically a free card. So yeah, really sweet creature, solid creature. We're definitely going to see this played in many formats. Erboglargoyf, 1 in a green with kicker blue or black or both, and each time it was kicked it mills 3 cards, and its power is equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard, and toughness is creature cards +1. We've seen this effect before. It's okay, but it didn't have a way to mill yourself along with it, so now that we've got the mill effect, maybe that's gonna make this good enough. I think we also have pretty good mill effects already in Standard, so yeah, this might be a real player in some Golgari style deck, probably. I think it's cool. It could make a new archetype for sure. Alright, I think there's 2 left. So Weatherlight Completed. This is a sweet artifact vehicle. It can't be crewed, at least by itself, but when you sack creatures, it gets effects. So when it has 4 or more Phyresis counters on it, it's a Phyrexian creature in addition to its other types, and it has 5/5 and flying stats. And whenever a creature you control dies, put a Phyresis counter on Weatherlight Completed, then draw a card if it has 7 or more counters on it. If it doesn't, scry 1. So every time you sack a creature, you're scrying 1, and when you get 4, this can start attacking as a 5/5 flyer, and when it gets 7, you start drawing cards. So this is just a nice sack outlet engine, and seems pretty solid in the sack deck for sure. Alright, yeah, last card is Writhing Necromass. It's 6 in a black. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard, and Death Touch, and it's a 5/5. So we've seen this effect before with, I think it's called Mole Drifter. I think, where it was like a green and a black and like 6, and it cost 1 less for each creature in your graveyard, and it had some other effect to do with returning a land to the battlefield or something. But that card was always pretty solid. This one is a similar size with Death Touch, and we saw that there were some mill effects in the last few cards as well as in Standard. So yeah, if you have a nice creature deck that wants things in the graveyard, this is perfect for that, and you'll get it on the board for pretty cheap. Seems like a solid card. But that's, yeah, okay. I forgot I just added this one. This is another one that goes into a sack type deck. So it's a black and a white, and when it has Death Touch and 2/2 body. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. Whenever another creature you control dies, opponents lose 1 life. So I don't know if there will be a black-white sack deck, or maybe this can fit into a Mardu style deck, but it's definitely another cool sack outlet, similar to like the Meat Hook Massacre or what Cat Oven was kind of doing, stuff like that. So yeah, anyway, lots of cool synergies, lots of cool cards in this set. Really excited. Yeah, I'm gonna put out my 5 new brews coming out real soon, starting probably tomorrow, since the new cards are the new sets coming out in just a few days. But yeah, look forward to that, and yeah, until next time, see ya.